Good evening and welcome to your home of comment, and not just right of reply, but opportunity to reply. You can tweet me at James Smart or KTN News. Tonight, we'd love to hear your thoughts on the Olympic Games. Specifically, would you blame Kenyan athletes who change nationality? Would you blame Kenyan athletes who change nationality? We'll talk about that at some point on this program. But first, the highlights.
There will be no party open once your name has been published in the Kenyan Gazette as a candidate for a certain party.
Nasema ndugu yangu, tumesukuma tukurudumu hii, tumekuwekea na wewe rudisha mkono.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the program. Now, the Joint Select Committee has completed its work, agreeing on sending home IEBC commissioners with recommendations that they hope will see new commissioners get into office by September this year. The team, both Jubilee and CORD, hope that their proposals will be good enough to satisfy their principles. That's President Uhuru Kenyatta and CORD leader Raila Odinga, who will receive these raft of proposals tomorrow.
The act that is in place, the commissioners are required to be 9, and their terms is that they should serve full-time. So we said they are going to be 7, and they are going to serve full-time.
The names of all the candidates to participate in the elections from various political parties be published at least 14 days before the nomination date, and that there will be no party open once your name has been published in the Kenyan Gazette as a candidate for a certain party or as an independent candidate. You cannot change your status.
Well, this is News Sources, and my panel tonight is Abdullah Boru, karibu to the program.
Asante.
Moses Mishira.
Asante sana.
And Dr. Alex Awiti. Gentlemen,
Thank you.
This is where we are. September, we'll have new commission. Everything is settled. Dr. Is this what we had, envisioned, or we could have possibly come up with? This is the best we could ever come up with.
Well, I guess it's a it's a choice between good and worse, or between bad and worse, if you like. And I think this is a political compromise. And I think in any democracy, especially one as nascent as ours, basically it's give and take. And the country is divided down the middle, and you have to get this kind of horse trading between Jubilee and CORD. I don't see us getting out of this without the political compromise and all of the red meat and the pork and all the bad things that come out of that. It's part of sausage making. So you got to accept it is an occupational risk that we face. If you have a democracy and it's consultative, it's messy, as many people have said. And so I guess there couldn't have been an outcome that almost approaches something that everybody might say, well,
That is it.
give and take and compromise.
This doesn't look like something that, when the street protests are going on and the demands and the counter demands and what Jubilee say, this is not what we want, and CORD say this is what we want. And at the end of the day, this does very little on the electoral process, but just satisfy the politics.
Well, Smart, you have to appreciate that there will never be any other outcome. It was always going to get here. These are people who let down this country, who lost our trust, rightly or perceived. As is, they are going home, and there will never be a better outcome.
Better outcome? Abdullah?
I'm still miffed that we have a full-time commissioners. In other places, people do not even know the electoral commissioners. But in this country, the electoral commission is such a massive thing, because these guys, for practically 1 year to the election, that's when they work. After that, they just sit there just reading newspapers. So I think we have to find a way of giving people jobs, but there are jobs elsewhere that people could be given.
Yeah.
And this idea again of thinking that we'll still have the 8 provinces. I mean, we haven't made a mental shift into devolution, where we still think alongside the former
So in that
provision-
case, we'd have what, 47
provision.
commissioners?
No, really, 5 commissioners are enough. This idea that we have to, the commission has to have the face of the country, it's not going to happen. Let's just be very clear with ourselves.
But is the thing then, no one has ever been satisfactory to say what the commissioners do and what the secretary does.
Well,
so
actually-
do we need all these things?
Well, we actually, the truth is or ideally, we do not need full-time commissioners. I can't agree more with you. And better still, why do we need 7?
They represent the former
really?
provinces.
Not quite. Well, I'm conversant with the idea that we should have an odd number, I mean, for polling and everything. But 5 seems to me like a good number. I mean, look at
How do you come up with 5?
Well, look at, I mean, three
Just come up with your head.
small.
Yeah.
No, and I was actually getting there.
Yeah.
The board that manages the financial system in Germany, a very big economy and a very big democracy, are 5 wise men. They are not necessarily men, but they're a group of 5 people. So,
But
tell
Mr.
me what-
the system of governance and electoral system is very different from ours.
well, that's
Yeah,
right.
they don't do fast past the post. We do fast. It's
Well,
very
and
different.
then just pushing the argument, then we could as well have 47 or 49.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, this number thing doesn't make sense to me. I mean, we could have 1 commissioner for all we care, or hundreds of them, because no one has explained why we need 7 or
But-
5 or whatever the
But
number.
I think I mean, what determines the number of commissioners we have is how competent, how well staffed, how technically savvy is the secretariat. That's why the whole idea of commission being a full-time doesn't make a great deal of sense to me. So you need to strengthen, for me, we need to strengthen the secretariat that can do continuous administrative, cleaning the register, which you're not very good at, and many other things. And then the commission is largely, just putting the pieces together.
They do the policy work right now, Dr. But the staff is there. We just, is it 2008 when we kicked out ECK?
Yeah.
Built in a new staff, from scratch. These are competent guys.
Yeah, but I think, James, the real problem that we seem to be skirting around is the credibility of IEBC as an institution, and even previous electoral organizations that have run elections in this country. That is at the crux of this thing. And every time every time somebody loses an election, they think those guys basically were in the tank for the other group. But what I think is that we need to reimagine the electoral process, the electoral system. I would suggest that we really demystify elections and have every Kenyan citizen who is above the age of 18 walk and vote whenever they want, and have these registers kept by the counties. You see, what is this whole thing about a national government and all these things that we create?
It's just
too
maybe
many-
perhaps in this
too many
continent that we're
problems?
just not good at maybe counting votes. Zambia
Not
had
just
3
votes.
3 million.
Not
people.
just votes.
Yeah, 3 million.
We're not good at doing census.
We're just not good at
counting
counting.
money.
We're also, we are not very good at, doing our economics. You'll see, some countries you are being told they are growing at, 10% for the past, whatever number of years. And you still,
Well, still, there is an insistence that the election will, in fact, go as planned, despite the massive reorganization that IEBC is set to undergo. So new commissioners then, a possible fresh voter register, and new rules of transmitting results. That's part of the proposal. If everything should go as planned, uninterrupted, we should work the clock, and, we should have, everything by August the 8th, everything should work as perfect, like nothing, happened. This was just, as much ado about nothing, someone would say, Prof.
If you ask me, actually, I think we still should be able to have elections in August next year as planned, and that's because the people we're getting rid of are only the commissioners.
So
as we are saying,
we should get back to that point.
Yes.
The commissions actually do nothing. Because
Yes,
Absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah?
there's nothing they do. There's no value per se they add to the everyday workings
So
of the
why
commission.
did code go to the streets? Is it 3-4 weeks? People got injured. Businesses said they lost
Yes, it's
about.
the whole point of having them as full-time employees. I mean, they actually.
They're still. I mean, you still have the same deal. There's
Well,
still
well,
new
it's-
commissioners. Still,
yeah.
you guys. What was the point? Help me. What was
I
the
think,
point?
just like I said, I think we really need to reimagine structures of democracy. And I think this is the one element that we've got wrong in terms of what really is believable conduct of an electoral process, and what are the institutions that you need to do that. And as these two gentlemen have said, you don't need full-time commissioners. You need a strong secretariat that basically manages the voters' register. and the process of verifying and vetting the people who participate in the election as contestants, and then managing the results and all of those other mechanics that come with an election. But having exorbitantly paid human beings sitting just to do a job for 3 days and then they're gone, I think is a huge waste of taxpayers' money.
I think you just lost a commissioner's job right there. I mean,
Fair enough. But the thing is, again, I mean, like, we are measuring in minor things. To be really honest, around these guys, whether these guys are in place, some of the things that we really need to be thinking about is the mechanics of conducting free and fair, peaceful election. But right now, the commissioners, and this is the problem with the ODM, they tend to go for things that, make the biggest splash. The commissions will go. Do you want, in your straight mind, tell me that ODM, come next August, they will be satisfied if the results do not go their way? So that is number one. We really need to begin thinking, every time the election doesn't go our way, we get rid of the commission. But again, we don't deal with the systemic issues.
Absolutely.
The voter registration. The process of voter registration in this country, it's like, you're more or less doing, something out of the ordinary. This out of this world experience around voter registration should just be demystified. Why don't we have this voter registration open? What is so magic about this black book, green book, whatever book that we want? Let's have one register that I can Google and figure out my name is there. That is my constituency. I can vote when I want to vote.
Part of the proposal, is that now. So someone
and
about it.
I guess also the bigger problem is having them as full-time employees and then paying them exorbitantly so. What that sets the commission up for is influence, because politicians will want their friends to be in there because you make it so lucrative. If you ask me, these guys, we should only pay them for the 2 or 3 days they work. In fact,
like poll clerks.
Yeah, like tell them thank you very much. Pay them nothing monetary, but I mean recognize them. That way, you take away the incentive of having to push your people, so that we don't want to create jobs in sensitive institutions like IEBC.
That's assuming that then the people who are working in the secretariat are angels.
Not necessarily.
They don't have to.
Yeah.
They don't have to. For all I care, it can be a robot sitting there.
Yeah.
As long as this process is done and done in a way that will fill me with faith that that process was done well. Because I'm always fascinated that we cannot conduct elections in this country. SONU elections problem, MCA's problem, presidency problem, KUJ problem. I mean, what is it so hard? I mean, like, one cannot be two. Let's just be, but that can only be done if we have a registrar that is open. What is so magical about this voter registrar that we really...
It still goes down to having these positions to be very lucrative, in that people actually spend money to get into these positions.
So it's all about the money.
It's basically, yes.
All right. Now, let's move to another issue. And for 3 consecutive weeks now, State House has been holding press conferences. They christened it summits. First, it was the Energy Conference, then followed the Infrastructure Conference, and just yesterday, Agriculture Conference. The idea has been to put cabinet secretaries and the president in a position where they update the public on success of the Jubilee regime. So, is it working or it's all PR?
Sugar is a question of technology. It's a question of cost of production. The government is working very hard to ensure that the whole community who depends on sugar to not suffer. And you have seen the government coming in strongly. Some people would question, why is government using money to do this? But a responsible government takes care of its citizens.
In 2013, a 50 kilogram of fertilizer was costing a farmer 4,500. Today, it's costing a farmer 3,200 in the open market. But for us as a government, we have provided our farmers at a price of 15 to 1,800 Kenya shillings. This is phenomenal, and this is very, very critical.
Well, here's the thing. That's huge hyperbole, right? Michelle, you've been there, you covered this.
It is ridiculous that government will spend all its days telling its people what it's doing, including this day that is supposed to be consultative. I mean, if you're talking about an agricultural summit, take it to the farm somewhere and let the farmers actually ask. I mean, most of the time, the thinking of government and the thinking on the ground are totally different. So if you're talking about agriculture and you're doing that in a boardroom in State House, And no new policy issues are being discussed. It's just government saying what they think they've done. Most of the time, what they think they've done is not what has happened on the ground.
Help me here. I find a big disconnect between, I mean, like Misha says, what exactly is on the ground and what the government says.
I think, this to me, just to sound a little pessimistic, is a bunch of bureaucratic kind of wonkish policy mongering. In a sense that we're here to tell you policy X, policy Z, policy Y. At the heart of all of these issues, if you look at infrastructure, agriculture, ICT, they're huge systemic enduring problems that we need to fix. A good example is agriculture. I don't think that our problem is primarily of production, okay, in terms of access to fertilizers, seed, etc., etc. It is really all of the other things that govern the sector. Managing weather and climate information, extension services to farmers, managing our soils properly, its post-harvest losses and all of these things, quality seed at the right time. But I think what we have accepted easily is that we'll throw technology at everything. And now what we're talking about is mechanization. And mechanization and mechanization. And yet that's not at the heart of the problem. And then when you hide behind that, it is difficult to see how Jubilee can deliver any of these pledges in just 5 years. And it will be back here next year and the year after and more summits without necessarily solving problems, as Mika said. Go at the heart and talk to the farmers. Let farmers tell you what it is. You're saying fertilizer is now cheap. Do farmers really have it? Do they have it in time? Do they have weather and climate information that tells them what's going to happen?
You'd actually be shocked. Most of the farmers actually do not get access to this fertilizer because middlemen take it and repackage it and sell it as regular fertilizer.
Do these summits make sense to you?
If you're addicted to spin, it's a very difficult thing to wean yourself off. If you really know that you're doing these things, Kibaki, I mean, like, for all his faults, one thing that President Kibaki never did was to go around telling people. I'll give you an example. I come from Marsabit. Every election cycle, President Moore used to come and say they will tarmac the Marsabit Isiolo road. President Kibaki only came when they were opening the road, and the road is there right now. People, you don't need to tell people, show people. And I think Jubilee needs to realize, fair enough, it's an election year, and people can do anything to get things done. But I think we can do better than just, PR. It has its limit. There's only so far you can get,
So is that evidence in 10 seconds or less that there is actually very little to show? Then we can only tell. You'll have the last 10 seconds.
It's partly that, but I also think that there's been huge issues in execution.
Huge issues in execution. Now, the country is still smarting from news coming from Northeastern Province, Mandera to be specific. Powerful Gare Council of Elders did send home more than 24 elected officials, including the governor, who's contesting that decision. We understand the council is, at this moment, interviewing new candidates. So is there anything the country can learn from that? Now, joining me now is one of the council members, Mohammed Isek. Good evening, and thank you for joining us, Mohammed. Who are the new guys who are coming in, and why have we sent home 24 elected officials, Mohammed?
Evening, Smart. Thank you for calling. James, first of all, I just want to inform you that we have formed the Gadi Council of Elders the year 2010 April, and reason of forming the Gadi Council of Elders purely is welfare of the community. We have 21 Council of Elders, including the chairman, and the reason why we come together as a community and form Council of Elders is to manage entire issue of the community. And we have the charter which we have come up with 2011, which community approved in AGM within Mandera County. Actually, and our charter, it is that before any election, the Council of Elders, they are supposed to meet and assess the development and everything concerning that particular county, which is Mandera County.
All right. So, Mohammed,
Yes.
just to interrupt you, sorry.
Yes.
The question that Kenyans are asking is, there is
Yes.
nothing wrong that the governor has done. For most people
Yes.
who are watching from outside, you know better.
Yes.
He's actually performed. He's done very well. So why would the governor and the senator, who perhaps has also performed, are being, just sent home?
Thank you. Smart. My answer is that under community charter is that first of all, the political power sharing are supposed to go to every sub-clan within the county. I just want to remind you that in Gary community, for example, we have 20 sub-clans. That can show you clearly if only one sub-clan can be in that seat for 10 years, for 20 sub-clans, that means for 20 sub-clans to get that particular seat to go around among the 20 sub-clans is going to be 200 years. And just don't forget that actually for 200 years,
Yes.
200 years is 4 generations. So it is very, very difficult for us as a council of elders to explain to 20 sub-clans that if one governor and one senator from particular sub-clan, we give them 10 years each, and 10 years times 20 is 200 years, and that is 4 generations.
Yeah.
It is going to be very unfair to other sub-clans of the community.
All right. My final question, Mohammed. Has
Yes.
this governor performed? Have the senators performed? Have all the members of parliament and council MCAs, have they performed? You put them in office.
Of course.
Have they performed?
Of course, not all of them perform. Some of them perform and some of them not perform. Of course, before we remove them, we assess all the situation, and we get a result that some of them perform and some of them not perform.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Just one question, Mohammed. Do you receive applicants from the prospective candidates, or do you actually go out and select on behalf of the community?
Actually, Smart, what we normally do for community, as a very community, we have 20 sub-clans and 4 major clans. What Council of Elders did, once we send home the sitting leaders, what we give the 4 sub-clans the opportunity. Now, for example, out of 4 sub-clans, we give a sub-clan, for example, a governor. We give them opportunity to sit down, to discuss internally, to come up with 3 candidates for both 4 major sub-clans. Once they come up with particular candidate, of course, if it is, for example, if it is seat of governor or a senator or a member of parliament or an MCA, that particular major sub-clan, they are supposed to come with 3 candidates. So now it is our responsibility as a council of elders, of course, to sit down with those guys, to assess them, to assess their capability, and of course their level of education and everything else, so that we can bless them as a council of elders, which we have a full mandate from the community.
Yeah, great. But then allow also me to ask you, where do you get your funding as a council of elders?
Yeah, that's a good question. Of course, we are getting our funding from the community which appointed us to that post. Actually, for your information, Smart, we don't have actually we don't have too much cost. Ours is only our office in Nairobi, fuel for our cars, and few resources to move around. And for that one, normally we get that particular fund from the community who appointed us to post of council of elders.
All right. Mohammed, thank you very much for talking to us. Waiting to hear the next list. The governors can always announce them fast on news sources. Gentlemen, does this work? This is something that we should take up as a country.
I think it works.
It
if you
works.
ask me.
It works.
I mean, I think they are stepping into a very critical space where even our religious leaders should be guiding, because you see, when we are not as a democracy at a level where one man is equal exactly to one vote, because there are people who need to be guided.
There are people who are more equal than others.
Yes.
Right? That's right.
I think this is really interesting. I think in terms of understanding the functioning of democracy and participation, this is almost like mediated or guided participation in democracy. And I was just thinking in my mind as I was speaking that political parties could actually do the same thing: recruit people who are competent who will win the ticket eventually. But I guess what they're trying to do is several things. So they're basically saying there's two possibilities. One, they might be signaling that every elected person in that community will only be eligible for one term.
Yes.
The other one is that they want to create rotational leadership. And as you said, there's several communities, and that nobody's going to wait 200 years for their turn to come, which is really interesting in terms of inclusiveness in the process of governance. But again, it begins to undermine certain aspects of democracy, which is really competition. So it basically means that you wait your turn until the elders appoint you. Now, the process, as he was asking, is how do you recruit? Do they apply? And then what is the process of vetting from each clan? Yeah. And what is the possibility that each clan has equal chances of competing for leadership?
Forgetting someone.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's really fascinating case study of, on one hand, you have an incredibly progressive constitution that is largely around, one man, one vote. But then, there's this council of elders. I mean, you go in some of these pastoral communities, people have got tremendous amount of trust on the council of elders than any other state institution. At one level, it is a commentary on the dire state of institutions, particularly formal institutions. Mm-hmm. On the other, it's also, we've got to wrestle with the fact that somebody like the present governor has said that he would want to run. But what that does is, for the Council of Elders, they say this is just a decree. They don't have an army. They don't have a police to enforce it. But to a greater degree, people will just accept and they will have to go. But then again, it's just the craziness around, post-colonial state, yes, that, it's neither fully formal, neither is it fully informal. So how can you negotiate this is really how that will. But I just want to echo what Ndugu Alex said about inclusiveness. Mm-hmm. In this country, we really do not have a great track record.
5 minutes or less. I need to go for a break.
Give it to the council. I mean, on a broader scale, or nationally, what the opposition is calling for is a rotational leadership, presidency especially, because as it is, some communities or GEC might never produce a president because our politics is around very much the tribe.
Well, it's only 2 communities since the creation of this country who have actually lived in State House. That's a very good point. Well, the council might show us one thing or the other. Taking a short break. When we come back, you have plenty more, including politics of ODM and the opposition. Don't go too far. It's interesting.
No, it is already some
get a team here. So if you have a team here, you can automatically.
That would happen, I think, say in Northeastern, then the clashes there would have been really crazy because the clans are almost maybe at war or just,
Council of Elders nationally. Kusema raundi hii Ogiek ndio run president.
Yeah.
The 5 years is yours.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see
How it will stick.
country responds to this.
Yeah.
Because there are many communities that are looking for a solution that fix things in
Exactly.
county level or even at constituency level.
Right. Like
Testing. This ODM party is a very strong party.
A life member, ordinary member, or even not a member of this? All right, welcome back to News Sources. Now it's become a chorus of some sort now. Politicians allied to former Prime Minister Raila Odinga asking him to retire from politics and do the noble thing, they say, endorse them. Of late, Bungoma Senator Moses Wetangula has been on this theme, asking the court leader to return the favor.
Na mimi nimezungumza na ndugu yangu Raila. Wengine wanasema kwa nini Wetangula anasema anataka? Kwa nini nisitaki? Na ninaweza. Mimi namuomba ndugu yangu Raila kila mahali, nasema ndugu yangu, tumesukuma gurudumu hii, tumekuwekea, na wewe rudisha mkono. Hiyo si shida.
All right, and joining us in the panel now is Luke Kanami, an editor here at The Standard. Look, you have lots of experience covering Western Kenyan, Western politics and that sort of thing. If you ask someone to rudisha mkono, there's something that you've done for them.
Yes.
All right? Well, what has Senator Wetangula done for him to deserve that rudisha mkono?
Yeah, when you look at the Kenyan politics, especially the ODM politics, you realize that everybody has been clamoring for Raila to endorse them. An example is when Raila endorsed Kibaki. So everybody feels that he's a kingmaker. And so everybody is crumbling and fighting. You know, can I get endorsement from the ODM party leader so that I can be endorsed?
That based on the belief that if endorses you, then you're a winner.
You're a winner. That has been the feeling, but because they feel that having participated in elections for the past 10 years and not been able to win, then it's time for him to look for another candidate to do that. But the question is, if you're asking Raila to endorse you, what have you done for him, just as you're asking? And you're looking at Senator Wetangula. He just joined ODA, the CORD coalition the other day. And he has not done much in terms of cultivating a relationship. Remember, ODM was formed 10 years ago, and you have a party that has been in existence for 10 years. It has 8 structures. Remember the Pentagon? And now those people in the Pentagon, perhaps people like Mudavadi and people like William Ruto can ask for kurudisha mkono, but for Wetangula it still has a long way to go.
Then deserve it. But why is this? Because I still fail to understand the concept of, so he's lost these 2 elections, possibly unpopular, and people cannot make him play. But still, he can still, when he decides to, say, Boru Tosha, Boru becomes the president. Why is that?
I think there are 2 things here. One is the idea that somehow, because I supported you, you have to support me. That is morality. That's, me being nice, I'll support you, but I don't owe you. but if you can, manage the consequences of not supporting someone, that is where that ends. Secondly, that somewhat, if Raila endorses you, you will become a leader. I think we need to interrogate that. I mean, he's only done once, and it worked. And I'm not 100% sure that it will work now.
Let's talk to someone who deals with numbers. Is this based on statistics or just belief?
No, James, I would like to ask the question, why are we here? Where are we at this point where we're looking for endorsement from someone? What is democracy really about, especially within organized political organizations like parties? I would expect that there would be a party primary and a process for electing and nominating a person who will be the flag bearer for the party. And and I must say it, in many jurisdictions, United States, United Kingdom, more developed democracies, I think you have only one step. And if you don't get it, you step out and somebody else comes in. The party has a way of recruiting. For instance, that's why Mitt Romney is was not running for the GOP nominations. I would have expected, it's okay, it's legitimate for all of these other guys within the Odinga organization, the ODM organization, to ask Raila to step aside because he has run twice and not won the thing. And what I would expect now is ODM and CORD to create a machinery for primaries and a believable nomination process for the flag bearer.
All right, let's stay with this. And in the corridors of politics also, sources are claiming that some deal has or is being put together that former Premier will endorse Musalia Mudavadi. Those talking about this say it looks like a candidate Mudavadi running mate Kalonzo Musyoka, Speaker Wetangula, and maybe Prime Minister Raila Odinga. In fact, just this weekend, Musalia Mudavadi was quoted in a section of the press saying, and I quote, he has no problem absolutely working with Raila Odinga. So what's the magic with this ticket other than what we have now? Maybe it's just hot air. What's the magic with Raila outside the ticket and then Mudavadi or someone else? All of a sudden it brings things into play. What's the magic with that?
Yeah, the issue of Raila and ODM, you had that, you've seen that before. When ODM vied in 2007, there was a lot of the election violence, of course, the bad blood between two major voting blocks, Nyanza and Western. And now we've seen the blocks shifted. 2013, we had the Rift Valley and the Central Province blocks working together. Of course, I'm just using it. We don't have provinces anymore, but just to illustrate what is happening. Now, today, you look at the party to beat is the Jubilee party after it has gone through a merger. How do you beat it? You must come up with a formula. What's the best formula? The only best way to beat Jubilee at the moment is that all Amani, ODM, Wiper, all of them come together and have one candidate. But the question is, who will be the flag bearer of this team? Should they come together? And so the idea is people are looking at somebody who appeals popular across the parties.
To ask it differently, supposing then Jubilee come together, does it matter who the candidate is?
They already have the candidate.
No, does it matter? No, just theoretically. Does it matter if they decide, someone else is that because they've said it's a big machine, it's already been put together.
Remember, in the 2012, they already had Mudavadi, and I remember the issue of what happened later on. It's a long story which we're talking about. So
it involves its effort. Yes. But let's not go there. Prof, does it matter really? So
I think it does, because what we have done consistently since 1992 when we repeal 1990 when we repeal Section 2A of the Constitution and create a multi-party democratic system, our politics has gravitated around personalities. We had former President Moi, we had Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, we had Kenneth Matiba, we had Mwai Kibaki. They created organizations that were just basically them. Okay, so you saw when Kibaki just bolted out of DP, it's no more, and then the wrangle and the contest for who's going to lead the Ford ticket became a problem, and Ford split into two.
Yeah.
So we've not really gotten out of that and created a politics that is not based on ethnic cleavages and personality cults. And I think that's where the problem is. And the question that you ask is really poignant, because if Uhuru is not the head of Jubilee ticket, that party will go nowhere. If for some reason he's not running, that's it.
And I mean, we had PNU, we have a precursor for this. Yeah. PNU created very powerful party. 2007 went ahead to win the elections, if you believe them. But the party today, they cannot put together a meeting of NEC members.
Party is essentially a special multi-purpose vehicle to win the elections. Past the elections, we really, and it's something that we struggle with really. I mean, if pre-2010, our biggest problems were institutions, unfortunately we can't make that. The institutions are there. It's now the question, the next phase should be about agency. How can we operationalize these institutions? It's very easy for some of these parties to complain anything outside their parties. I mean, why is primary such a radioactive thing? Why can't we do primaries? I mean, I was listening to, Senator Murungi speaking about, scared of people party hopping.
Yes.
Why is it such an existential fear to a lot of people that people will hop parties? So, I mean, I think the political parties have not evolved to a point where they can actually do these things with people believing in them. It's very easy for them to make noise about, IEBC, when in fact, party primaries is just a bloodbath in this country.
All right, let's stay with politics. And the Orange Democratic Movement is celebrating 10 years of existence this month. Kenya's largest party has seen some good and awful days, which raises the question, what's the best for Kenya? Should political parties fold up and form what Jubilee calls one big house? Or is the Orange way the better way? Atari, you have first got this.
Well, the whole thing really is, can we tolerate and can we accommodate competitive democracy that is stripped of all these ethnic cleavages and personality cults? I think this is the heart of the problem. And I should have expected that Jubilee with TNA and URP should have entertained competition within that organization. I don't feel that it makes politics any easier, more credible, more believable, democracy more agile and effective if you're constantly creating these huge umbrella bodies. I know there's a problem with too many political parties. You don't want to go the way the United States has gone, where you have just two choices and sometimes no option, and the United Kingdom as well. I think we need to create this multiplicity, which basically also reflects the diversity of this country and the problematic nature of a historical path dependency that is basically of a post-colonial nature.
Mm-hmm.
And so to amalgamate these things, to me, is just really distractions.
Yeah. Look, you covered, what is that thing that this party captured in the imaginations of their supporters and Kenyans then? And do they still have it, or have they lost it?
Yeah, look at the formation of the formation of Orange Party in 2006. It was formed as a clamor. Came after the idea of when they were deciding. You remember the orange and the banana when you were deciding
the
question of the referendum. And remember who was on board. There was Uhuru Kenyatta. There was almost everybody. The other people on the other side was you only had the deputy president on the other side. Yes. And you see, it captured the mood and the feelings of the most Kenyans. But when it started getting a beating from the ethnicity questions, and you saw them pulling out. But it has survived and remained for the 10 years. And at the moment, it is the only party that actually has quite a number of presence.
It's the largest party. I mean, this is the thing that we keep forgetting, and again, we do it in the press, that they have actually the most members of parliament in the House today. It's a statistic that we refuse to say.
However, the question that I would ask, would it survive Raila?
Would it?
I have no idea. I've not seen any evidence to that effect, because that's the problem.
Can it survive Raila? That's a better question. Can it survive Raila?
It should. It's good for the country. It's good for our politics. It's good for our democracy, for it to survive. Can it, though? I mean, if, like Mwalimu has said, it's ethnic-based, personality cult, cleavages, would it? That's the question. I'll be surprised. I mean, I would be very happy for people to prove me wrong, because for me, ODM is a special machine for Raila Amolo Odinga. Post him, I'm still struggling to see anybody who will be able to have the charisma, the presence, the experience to hold.
I want to disagree with you.
Please go ahead.
I want to disagree with you. Looking at ODM at the moment, it has the largest member of parliament outside. It's what you think about is ethnic based. That is the Nyanza. Look at the number of MPs from Western. Look at the number of MPs from across the country. Look at cost. It has very many members of ODM. So if the structures are right, if they get it right, it can survive beyond Raila. So it's just not, I don't know why people have kept on insisting that it is ethnic based. It is not.
I'm so happy you raised the question if. That is the massive.
You have a final go at this. What do they need to do to survive Raila? Because we've agreed it's the best thing for this country.
I think what they need to survive this is potentially Raila to do two things. One is to step aside and not run. The other one is Raila to compete with all these guys in a credible, believable primary.
And he wins.
If he wins, that's fair game.
And they will walk away. Let's move on now. Finally.
They shouldn't walk away if they believe in democracy.
Well, that's a big question and a big ask. Yeah, and it's not in doubt anymore. The world's fastest policeman is Kenyan. David Rudisha flashed past the field to not only give Kenya another gold medal, but making history, becoming the first Kenyan to retain an Olympic title. That speaks more about our bursting talents here at home. Before you know it, someone is kicking you out just before you win and after you win. Still, the question on how we treat our athletes is back at the center of conversations and discussions. Bahrainian Ruth Jebet won the 3,000-meter steeplechase in the second quickest time in history. You will note Jebet was a Kenyan who changed her citizenship, and she reportedly will bag 52 million Kenya shillings for winning that gold medal at Rio. Kenyans who are winning gold will get about 1 million shillings. So I asked you earlier on, do you blame Kenyan athletes who change nationality? And there is King David on your screen as we go about that. There goes the man. I asked people on Twitter if you will blame Kenyans who change their nationalities. 78% think absolutely not. That's quite shocking.
Jesus
and only 12% of you say, well, we'll blame them. Another 10% just don't care. So Kenyans, don't blame Kenyan athletes who change nationality. And I see how. It's looking up for yourself. 10 seconds each. I need to leave. Let me start with Dr.
This is really consistent with the East Africa Youth Survey that we did and the Kenyan segment, that people would do anything to make money. I would change nationality to make money. This is basically what your poll is saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have never factored out in our ministry, in our government, how do we handle or how do we reward our sports people. And that, so long as we don't factor it.
Basically how we reward anyone. This country does not reward anyone.
Exactly.
What we forget consistently,
yes.
Kenya and Kenyans are an incredibly transactional lot. You know, we forget that this country, this piece of land used to be owned by Imperial British East African Company. Everything is transactional.
Everything transactional.
Yeah.
That's how we end the program tonight. This is News Sources. My name is James Smart. Thank you to Dr. Alex Awiti, Luke Kanami, and Moses Mishira, who was after on, and indeed Abdullahi Boru. We'll do this all over again tomorrow. Time for the ladies' night. Don't go too far. News is up next.